Friday morning, can't control it. Fired up and counting every minute. Hands are shaking, eyes are burning. The time has come, yeah, this is not a warning. The week was just so long, we had to let it go. Our problems disappeared, we're not tied up anymore. The weekend is here. Sunday calls, we are sick and tired of it. Up and down, can you feel it? Up and down.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Johansson show. It's Kat. Today, got a special guest, somebody I've been wanting to speak to for quite a while, Scotty Rawk. Scotty, thank you for coming on.
No worries, man. Anytime. It's a pleasure.
Really excited. I think from the inception of BWR, you're somebody that's been going through the ranks and just getting better and better and better over the years. And one of the crowd favourites, like every time I was at a BWR show, they loved Scotty Rawk. How does that feel?
Oh, you're gonna make me blush. No, honestly, like it does mean a lot because like I have been like absolutely working my ass off like for the past few years, really sort of taking wrestling more seriously. Well, when we could wrestle, so any kind of recognition that's noticed, like it does genuinely mean the world because there's so much that goes on like behind the scenes than just wrestling on show day, and a lot of people deserve a lot more recognition than they get, like because they do try. Like not like in a oh this guy's a tryhard kind of way, but like people do try hard. Whether it's through training or through like working out and things like that. Like there's so much that goes on behind the scenes that people build for, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I was always impressed the fact that at every show there was always medical presence at the shows as well, which a lot of companies don't do, and it's stupid that they don't do it.
No, I completely agree.
Yeah, especially when they're doing these like big crazy gimmick matches where anything can go wrong, and they've not brought in one of the local like paramedics. Like, how does it feel being part of like BWR where it is so organised? They give people a lot of opportunities, which we'll get into later. But you faced James Drake and Zach Gibson.
Yeah, that was incredible.
Like, how does it feel to be part of BWR like that and be trusted so much?
It was always a case of with BWR when the company first started, it was always a case of right, we've got big ideas and like we know how to sort of get there. It was always a case of like go big or go home, and we wanted to be taken seriously. We wanted to be put in the big leagues of like the British indie scene.
Yeah.
So when BWR first started, it was kind of what was left of the old Grimsby scene after one of the old companies had shut down, and the workers in Grimsby were kind of just like, well, what do we do now? Like, literally just stood there like with our like twiddling our thumbs, just like what do we do? So it was around the same time that I went off to uni, but I was in talks a lot with everyone that was putting ideas together and putting wheels in motion.
Yeah.
And we're all more of a family than we are a business. Like it's always a case of family first, business second. And I think that kind of environment really creates something special. And it's been noted by people that work for NXT UK. It's been noted by people that have worked across seas, that have worked in Japan, that have worked in the US, that have come and worked for British Wrestling Revolution. Everyone has said that there's such a lovely sort of family atmosphere backstage in front of the crowd, like before the show, after the show. And it's really nice. Like there's been comments made by people that are signed to huge companies, and they've said that BWR really know how to look after workers. So that's something that we like. Everyone obviously takes pride of. Like everyone takes pride in at BWR, and I think the medical staff that are there is genuinely a necessity, because more and more companies need medical staff there. The amount of, like, obviously everyone is trained to do their job, and everyone is trained to do things as safely as possible, but accidents happen, slip ups happen. I mean, sometimes it's out of everyone's control. Like I've had nothing serious, but I've had a couple of like knocks, a couple of little injuries, a couple of little niggles. And if it's been at a BWR show, like, I've been seen to straight away and told sort of the best way around getting through what I've done. Like concussions, for example, I've had sort of a handful of concussions, and like instantly, as soon as I'm backstage, it's like, right, get him checked, and I'm sat there with a torch being shone in my eyes, and they're like, yeah, you need to not fall asleep for a while.
Like, just from the atmosphere, from like myself looking, and because I know like some of the workers on the show, I'll go over and speak to them. But the fact Rory Coyle brings his dog along to the show, and the dog will be backstage whilst he's wrestling, and he brings it out to the merch stand, like, I think that just sums up how like wholesome the place is.
Yeah. Who else did we have? So I was talking to my mum about this the other day. My mum turned to me and she was like, "Do you know who I really miss?" And I was like, "Go on." She's like, "I really miss Rory Coyle." And I was like, "Why?" She was like, "Mainly because I really miss Newt. Newt's his dog." And I was like, "No, that's fair. That's fair." But I mean, backstage at one of the shows that we had at the Wonderland, like, indoor warehouse up Cleethorpes, I walked backstage after my match, and there was Jack Jester sat there with, I think it was Viper's dog, Piper Niven. So they'd both come down together, and she'd brought her dog in the car, and there was just Jack like babysitting Piper's dog while she was wrestling, and it's just sick. Like, honestly, like, more people need to bring more dogs to shows.
Can I bring my Newfoundland?
Yes.
She's like as big as me, but
100%, 100%. And I will personally pull up a chair next to you for your dog, and I will. Well, I may come and sit with you for the entire show. Like, more wrestling shows with dogs. 100%, I'd have that. Like the old, like the old British Bulldog.
Yeah, just yeah. And Rory Coyle and Matt Myers, Chuck Wood at WrestleVerse wanted to do all the stuff with a bear. We don't need anybody with a costume. Just use the dog.
Yeah.
So I think my first BWR show, because I've been hearing quite a lot, but didn't drive, and then I think it was just somebody at work. Turns out he liked wrestling, and I was just like, never expected you to like wrestling.
Oh, that's always the best, though.
Yeah, and he was telling me about, like, because he's a lot older than ourselves, so he used to do the tape trading back in the day, and he was like, he went, I go across to like BWR a lot. I was like, oh, I really wanted to be going there. He was like, right, do you want to come to the show? Grizzled Young Vets are on it. Should be a good show. I was like, fuck it, let's go. And again, that's where yourself and Cole Quinzel got to face the Grizzled Young Vets. When were they the tag team champions of NXT UK at the time?
Yeah, so they made a big deal out of it was BWR Tag Team Champions versus NXT UK Tag Team Champions, and it was huge, like 100% my biggest match to date. It was just incredible, just being able to work with them and talk with them and see how they like structure things, see how they like to work, and how they've picked things up. Because I used to train, so I went to university in Liverpool, and for a solid sort of 5 or 6 months towards the end of me being at uni, I was actually training at Fighting Spirit. So I was training under JD and Zach Gibson. and then obviously I had to move home, and I couldn't drive, so I couldn't really justify going back over for training all the time. But it was really nice. It was like it had done a full circle. So
Yeah.
it was quite nerve-wracking, really, because it was almost as if it was teacher versus student at some points. But
Yeah.
honestly, just listening to him talk through and structure the way they wanted things to go, and then just having normal conversations with them, man. Like, they are two of the soundest people that I feel have the right to not be humble.
Yeah.
Like, they have the right to be like above the rest. Like, they have their right to walk into an indie locker room with their noses in the air, but like that's not the done thing. Like, they are just so genuine. Like, they're just genuine people. Like, we got backstage after the match, and JD turned to me and he was like, "How was your elbow?" And I was just like, my elbow was fine. What, did you think I knocked it or anything? He was like, no. Like, how was your elbow getting it tattooed? And I was like, oh, right, okay, right. This is what we're talking about now. And yeah, like, we just had like in-depth conversations about, like, we were just shooting the shit, and it was sound. It's just so nice backstage to not feel intimidated, because like, I remember growing up, especially sort of through wrestling when I was like 17, 18, and you'd have a bigger name on the cards, or you'd have someone that was kind of like notorious for being a bit of a like locker room commander.
Yeah.
And the entire atmosphere had changed as soon as like they turned up on show day. So everyone would kind of just sink into themselves and not want to say anything out of turn, and things like that. So it's genuinely so nice to see how far wrestling has progressed, in the sense that like it doesn't really happen anymore. It is literally just like, we're all there for the same reason. We're all striving to be the best that we can be in the industry that we love and that we want to give so much to. And especially at companies like BWR, where it is very family like orientated.
Yeah, I think they do the family orientated really well, because it's, hey everybody, it's family orientated, but expect a little bit of pushing the line a little bit, where you may have the hardcore matches, or Jack Jester and Shah Samuels having a piss up.
Yeah.
Like, I think that stuff's done well, because it's still a safe environment for the family. It's not going too overboard where they're going to go home sprouting a load of like shit that they've heard at the show. And I think it's just a really, really good atmosphere. And it was the case of the next show I could get to, I was like, right, I'm going to, because despite, I think your match saved it for me though, because the match before, I believe, was just before the interval, and it was a video nasty match between Rory Coyle and Erin Jacobs. And Erin decided he wanted to put blood in his mouth and spit it out on his entrance. And as it sprayed across all the crowd, it just decided to have one big clump, spray towards me, and just diver up. I'm in my shirt and trousers because I come straight from work. White shirt, light blue light suit trousers, just covered in blood. I'm sat there for the full match. I was like, what a wanker. What a wanker. And then somebody from BWR came over and was like, hey, like, sorry, let us give you admission fee. I'm like, it's fine, don't worry about it. Just maybe ask him not to spit at a crowd. And then Myers texted me, he was like, was it you that Erin spat all over? I was like, mate, I'm fuming. I was like, it's my favourite shirt and trousers. And he was like, look, it feels really bad for it. So I think Rory ribbed him a little bit. And then Erin was like, oh no, look, sorry, let me give you some merch. I was like, no, again, don't worry about it. You need to sell that, make money. So it kind of like saved it all around, but I was livid. I think there's a picture of myself and Erin somewhere where he's just pointing at me and I'm just covered in blood, and I was just like, this better come out.
You're just there like, think of the cleaning bill. Think of the washing machine.
Yeah. I was just I was livid, but despite that, like, still came to the next show, and I just thought the whole vibe, and I think the way they've handled out the pandemic, where they're like, right, we're not going to have a stupid year-long title reign for somebody that's not defended it.
Yeah.
Let's strip everything away. We're going to and actually promote it as a restart rather than
Yeah.
on a hiatus.
No, definitely. And as you say, I feel like it's still it's a family friendly company. We run shows that are suitable for all ages as it's advertised. It's very sort of PG, but it does sort of push the boundaries a little bit. Like it very much reminds me of like when do you remember when like Raw was suitable for 13s and over, like that sort of era. Like it's a little bit tongue in cheek. Like you have the sort of the happy chappy like crowd favorites, but then you are going to get like a gritty sort of hardcore match from like Tyler Devlin or like Tyler Devlin, Jimmy Havoc. Like that was a thing that happened on like an all ages show, and I know for a fact that well, to be fair, I think it's the first time that Jimmy Havoc hasn't really worked an not an over 18 show for a long time. But there's things like that. Obviously, we have had a couple of like over 18 show, and they were fun. Like, don't get me wrong, they were fun. But I do think there's an element that takes away from the overall feel of a show when you restrict who's allowed to be there.
Yeah.
Because I've always come up knowing that wrestling it might not be everyone's cup of tea. It might not be something that's to everyone's taste, but it is for everyone, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, like you see it with the families where you can tell they're just there taking the kids, but then before the end of the show they've got into it, and I think that's a good thing. Where like with the younger kids as well, you have some sort of like vulnerability about them where they're not the typical smart fan, and they can get so invested and passionate, thinking everything that's happening is like shoot, it's going real, it's not kayfabe, and I think that's just I think that's a good way, because you see a lot of family friendly shows, and it's like no disrespect to them because they do great stuff, and like I go to their shows anyways. But with NGW, with City Hall, they're a different family friendly show to what BWR would be. They make sure it's very PG rather than pushing to the 13. Like I always remember Haskins and Sammy Callahan beating the living shit out of each other in City Hall, and there was some faces like maybe not suitable for that crowd, whereas BWR found a way they can put Tyler Devlin and Jimmy Havoc on.
Yeah, I think Grimsby and Cleethorpes would eat up Callahan, Haskins. Like I'm not gonna lie, but it's always been a big thing. Like when, as I say, I'm quite close with everyone that's within BWR, and conversations that we've had. It's stuff like, remember the best parts about wrestling. Like remember what you enjoyed watching, like as a kid, as a teenager, and now how can we do that on an indie show? So it's conversations that I've had with like people like Tyler Devlin, people like Reese Ryan, that we've sat and we've just chatted and we've spoke about like the best parts that we can remember about wrestling as a kid, and all of like the themes seem to be right. Well, it was Attitude Era going into sort of Ruthless Aggression Era.
Yeah.
So it was before WWE was stamped with like PG, and it was still like wrestling was still for everyone back then. Like as a kid, you still sit and you love wrestling, but it was a little bit more sort of tongue in cheek. It was a little bit more edgier. It was a little bit more rough around the edges and not sort of a silky smooth surface. And that's the sort of image that we try and portray. Like it's for everyone, but at the end of the day, when you're running a wrestling show in Grimsby, and Grimsby's rough, like you've got to appeal to that sort of audience, and for us to pull like sellout crowds, I think 90%, if not sort of 99% of the shows that we've ever ran. And we've been running, if we cut out the pandemic year, we've been running as a company for 2.5 years. So it'd be coming up 3.5 now.
Yeah.
In all the shows that we've run in 2.5 years, like 90, if not 99% of them have been sellout shows. And we're pulling people, as you say yourself, from like over the water, and people from Manchester have come over, people from London have come up, and so like we are drawing a bigger crowd. But initially, it was based on the ideas that us, as sort of rough and ready Grimsby kids, what we liked to watch in wrestling.
Yeah.
And if you like something, and if you're fully invested in something, then that's going to transpire.
Yeah, definitely. And I think me coming across the bridge isn't too big of a deal, but when you're pulling people over from Manchester and getting people coming up from London, they're the two probably most saturated markets in wrestling. You've
100%.
got the Manchester Liverpool scene, and then you've got the London scene.
Yeah.
And for you to be able to be bringing people from there and having to spend the money that all us Northern fans probably have to spend to go to these other shows, it's refreshing to have a company like it on somewhat our doorstep.
100%. And I think like we never expected it to go this well. Like when we first started, as I say, it was sort of the remnants of the old like Grimsby scene.
Yeah.
And we were used to wrestling in front of like, I don't know, 60, 80 people. And it was mostly just like family and friends.
Yeah.
And now we're wrestling in front of like 350 to 400 people every month in Central Hall or in Luke Harley's or Casablanca, like wherever we are. There's a decent crowd, and we get a good reception. It's mental. Yeah. But to pull people from like the Northwest scene is huge. The Northwest scene is so like vast. Like you've got so many different like training schools and companies that are not only sort of well known, but know that they deliver a good product. Like places like Future Shock, places like Fighting Spirit, places like Catch, Wrestle Island, like different places that provide decent like quality products. TNT, for example, as well. But then to have fans that have that on their doorstep make the journey and come to a BWR show, like it's huge. It's a huge thing.
Especially because although you bring in certain like imports or the big names, that's not what the show is about. The show is a lot about the local talent or the core BWR roster, which is a big thing. In as if you've just been bringing every Tom, Dick, and Harry with somewhat of a name to the show to try and get it. You've built it like Jimmy McIlwee, for example. The reception he got when he beat man like DeReese was fucking ridiculous, and I think that's why when people, I always remember putting a tweet out after No God, No Masters, because I think it was just going right up on Twitter like it normally does. Oh, British wrestling's dead, blah, 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 blah. NXT UK's ruining the world and shit like that. And I was like, Brit Wrestling's dead yet. BWR and new companies selling out time and time after again.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's not selling out. Like it's not dying. If you invest in your talent, again, like yourself, you and Cole were fan favourites.
Yeah.
And you was on the doorstep, and you'd get, well, I think it was probably around 50-50, if not more, swaying to your favour for who the fans wanted to win out of you and Grizzle Young Vets.
I know, like that was mega. Like genuinely, it felt incredible to go out there with such a like well-known tag team. Like not only just in the UK scene, but across like NXT, and I know that they've wrestled in China, and they were like the longest reigning Progress tag champs and stuff. So to go out there and get such a warm, like heightened reception, despite the fact that we were wrestling GYV, it just felt incredible. It really did. Like it was mind blowing.
Yeah, definitely.
as you talk about like Jimmy McIlvey, it's always been very sort of core based, as you say. It's very much right. These are the BWR like guys. This is our roster, and anyone else that comes in, yes, like they get brought into the family, but it's very much what's in our best interest and what's in the company's best interest. Yeah. Like if you put it into perspective, Jimmy McIlvey started out, he was a homeless bum sitting outside Luke Harley's, trying to get in the doors, trying to get BWR to let him wrestle for a contract to be signed for BWR so he could wrestle more regularly. He had merch, he had t-shirts. That's still one of my favourite merch ideas that just says, "We'll wrestle for food." And seeing from where he started to coming through, like for him to start as that sort of bum that no one knew, that people were just sort of happy to see, and because people got invested in the story of Jimmy McIlvey.
Yeah.
So to see him come from sitting outside Luke Harley's with a bit of cardboard that said "We'll wrestle for food" on it, to tagging with Grado, to winning the Underground Championship, to hosting and opening shows for like big, like his title reign anniversary was like 100 days long or something at the last show we ran, and he opened the show. He's dressed up as Father Christmas at like in December shows and come out and had his ass kicked. Like Will Cruz, he literally came out with a Santa sack and in full sort of red and white Santa suit, came out to Mariah Carey, absolutely loving life, to turn around and get twatted by Will Cruz with a steel chair. Like just such an abrupt stop to such a high moment. Like people love Jimmy McIlvey, and that has always been like something that's really resonated with all of the BWR guys. Like we joke and we jib and we're like, if we can make Jimmy McIlvey a star in BWR, then we can make anyone a star in BWR. But like our love for Jimmy is so strong. It's like it's insane.
It's just that storytelling and the long term of it. The fact that you talked about like the homeless stuff, and it was just building to get the fans behind him, and it's just an organic growth. Like I always remember Ospreay being booked for NGW, and he was facing Robbie X, who, in my opinion, is one of the best cruiserweights in the world.
I would agree.
But at the time, Ospreay, height of his career, and it was a bit like yourselves and GYV. Like everybody was cheering for Robbie. Nobody really they reacted to Will's moves, but nobody was really behind Will because the audience was just that invested in Robbie X because he was their guy. And I think that's a similar formula that BWR have adopted, where you've got that core roster, you've got the identity of these are BWR guys.
Yeah, and I think as well, because from the start of BWR, they saw sort of me and Cole come together. Like they've been there. If you've been to a lot of BWR shows, like you will have seen, and you will know what we're talking about when we say like the BWR guys. But people saw me and Cole come together. They saw like the connection and the almost coming of age, like growing up within wrestling together. So like when we first started tagging together, I think I was like 19, he was 16, he was 17, sorry. So we were very much like the BWR babies.
How did that come about, you two teaming together?
It was literally, it was only a few shows in, so we were kind of thrown together.
Yeah.
Like you see sort of, you see it happen in the WWE all the time, like just getting two people and throwing them together and be like, well, these are a tag team now. and a lot of the time it doesn't necessarily work. But in this instance, it was it was like, right, you're tagging with Cole, and I was like, okay, like that's a weird sort of dynamic, but like we'll see what happens. I was like, is it only for like a couple of shows? And I was like, yeah, it's only for a couple of shows. See how it gets over. And I was like, yeah, sound. And then fast forward 2.5 years, and we are like 3-time BWR Tag Team Champions.
That's crazy. Not only 3-time, but you use the first ever Tag Team Champions as well.
Yeah.
So how does that feel? Like, again, you mentioned you grew up together and friendship was blossoming, but you're like, how long is it going to be for? A couple of shows, okay, that's fine. And then before you know it, you're getting told, right, you're going to be the first Tag Team Champions.
Well, we weren't told. It's quite a funny little story. So the BWR ran the tag team tournament, and as I say, we're all very close, and everything that's in house is all very open, and it's very openly discussed. So I think it had 4 rounds. It had a qualifier, a quarterfinal, a semi-final, and a final.
Yeah.
Me and Cole were meant to be out in the quarterfinals.
All right.
So we were like, it was spoken that we'd qualify, and then we'd get knocked out in the quarterfinals. And we were like, right, okay, cool. Like that's our tag run done. Then like that's okay. We've been put together because there's a little bit like we both had beef with Reese Ryan and Big T. So we were kind of like put together with a common enemy.
Yeah.
But we thought like when the tag tournament came about, we was like, right, okay, cool. So we're a tag team and we're in this tournament. We'll qualify and then we'll get knocked out, and that'll be it. We'll kind of both go our separate ways. But when we were speaking to like the booking team and management, they like all they kept saying was like, you guys are just like too good. Like they were just like, we can't not run with this. And I was like, okay, right, well let's see how it goes. And it was like just the chemistry that we had together, and the genuine sort of friendship that we did have behind the scenes, but that sort of transpired in the ring, and people could genuinely see that we were having a good time, and that things just flowed together, and it was really good. It was really fun. And as I say, sort of management just kept saying that they'd be stupid not to run with it. So we got through the quarterfinals, and then it was like, right, okay, well, you're gonna go under the semi-finals, but we'll still do something with you as a tag team on the side. And I was like, right, cool, no worries. Like we like there's plenty of stuff that we can do as a tag team that doesn't necessarily need like titles in the picture. Like obviously everyone within a roster in their subjected area wants to be the champion. Like whether you're in the cruiserweight division, the tag division, the heavyweight division, like I'm a strong believer that if you're not striving to be the champion, or if it doesn't look as if you're striving to be the champion, then why are you there? Yeah. Like title belts do and should mean something.
No, I agree.
So we got to the semi-finals, and just before we went out, there was like, right, okay, we've changed the finish. Like you and Cole are over, and I was like, so we're in the finals then, and there was like, yeah, you're gonna wrestle GBH, and I was like, okay. So the finals came round, and it was me and Cole versus Kip Sabian and Blake from GBH. And it all like the week leading up to it, like there was banter, there was sort of jeering, there was rib poking, and just being like, how does it feel to be this close to the title, and knowing that like Kip's going to take it off you. And I was just like, oh, right, okay. And people like Tyler Devlin and Jimmy and Reese and Youngie, like they all took the piss. Yeah. And we just sort of took it because, as you say, like there's no harm in being the brunt of the joke at times. And then it got to show day, and we'd sort of talk through everything with Kip and Blake that we wanted to do, that we wanted to incorporate, and how we wanted to structure it. And like, I just remember Kip sort of like chuckling to himself a little bit, and I was like, right, okay. I was like, okay, something different's going on here. And then as we got to the curtain and we're about to make our entrance, Devlin comes up and whispers in my ear. He was like, "Oh yeah, by the way, boys, you two are going over. Have a good one." And like, so me and Cole go on the entranceway. We're just like, "What the fuck?" Like everything we've just talked through and everything that we've just like sort of gone through in our heads and everything that we've spoken to about with Kip and Blake, it's just like, well, that just goes out the window. And we get to the ring, and I can't remember if Kip and Blake were already there or if they made their entrance after us, but just staring at them across the ring, and Kip's just there like, I was just like, okay. So that was incredible. Knowing that the company put so much trust and faith in like us to be the face of their tag division.
Yeah.
Like, not only, as you say, like the first ever tag champs, it was just incredible. It was very overwhelming, and yes, we had a bit of a cry. It was wonderful. It was very wholesome, but it was just the pure sort of feeling that we've got something, and people think it's got legs, and people genuinely believe in our ability to be the face of like the tag division.
Yeah. How did you find the feud you had with the Sick Boys then?
Really enjoyable, genuinely really enjoyable. So we faced them at the Winter Wonderland show, which was December, and like that place was cold. Like, I remember watching footage back, and anytime anyone was hit or like chopped, especially anytime anyone was chopped in that sort of freezing cold warehouse in the middle of December, on pictures, on camera, it looks like their soul was leaving their body, because like the steam and sweat coming off them was ridiculous.
It's like Rocky in the meat fridge just punching all the hams.
Yeah, no, legit, and that's exactly how it was. And so yeah, me and Cole faced Aaron Jacobs and Rory Coyle, and that match, they ended up disqualified. I think Rory hit me with a videotape.
Shock.
He hit me with the tag belt first, then he hit me with the videotape.
Yeah.
And yeah, they were disqualified, and we cut a big sort of promo just being like, if you want to play dirty, then we'll play dirty. Like, we aren't just the sort of happy, chappy, carefree lads that have like whimsically like got to the titles without trying.
Yeah.
Like, we can sort of put our money where our mouth is, and we will defend the belts in any which way you want. And that's when Rory said about it being an I Quit match. And just the build for that match felt really cool. It's the first like hardcore thing that we'd done. Like, not only like not just as a tag team, but it's the first hardcore thing that we'd both done. As I say, we were both still quite young. So like, we got all excited and we was like, oh my god, we can wrestle in jeans. So yeah, that's what we did. And a couple of weeks before, I was stood in like my back garden, and I bought 2 steel chairs from Argos. They were both like they're just 2 plain white steel chairs, and I spray painted one of them orange and one of them pink, because obviously I had the orange hair and Cole had the pink hair at the time. So like, a lot of like genuine sort of work and stuff went into how fun like this was going to be, because you got to remember, from a sort of like kayfabe point of view, me and Cole were there. Like, we were the two young lads. We just won the belts. Like, we were there on a high. We still wanted to have fun. Like, wrestling was fun to us.
Yeah.
And then you've got the Sick Boys, where it's very much like, it's gritty. This is what you work your ass off for.
Yeah.
And almost like bitter that they'd not been necessarily considered in the tag picture. Like, I think they went out in like the quarters or the semis of the tournament. So yeah, it was very much a story of like the bitter heels versus like the baby faces that were riding a high. So we went out and we did the I Quit match. We had the colourful chairs, and we'd, the pillowcases that are like usually filled with thumbtacks.
Yeah.
So me and Cole had a pillowcase that we came to the ring. We were shaking it, and we were like making sure the crowd knew it was there, and being like, "Oh my god, like the boys have got tacks." And then we emptied it, and it was just a bag full of Skittles. Like, that's the level of kids on E-numbers that we were working at that time.
Yeah.
So pouring Skittles into Rory Coyle's mouth and then super kicking him out of his face. Like, still one of my all-time favourite spots that I think I've ever done. And obviously that came to a grueling halt towards the end of that match. So I think we were first half main event.
Yeah.
So we were 3 matches in. We were the third match on. And the end of our match literally stopped the show. So
was it Cole's collarbone?
Yes. So Erin Jacobs had the chair wrapped around Cole's head that was on the floor, and I was tied up in the corner. I was like, my wrists were like handcuffed and duct taped to the rope and everything. And the finish was I was to say I quit to sort of spare Cole from getting this chair like stomped on his head.
Yeah.
And so Erin was there with his foot on Cole's neck over the chair, and I was like Rory had the microphone in my mouth, and I was like, I quit. I had tears streaming down my face because I was very much in the moment. And they announced the Sick Boys as the new tag team champions, and I was sort of cut away from the rope, like, because I physically, like, I actually couldn't move. Like, as much as people think when that sort of shit happens, like, it's gimmicked, I was legitimately, like, my wrists were tied and duct taped to that rope in real fashion.
Yeah.
Like, it was layers and layers and layers. I think Youngie had to come across with a pair of scissors and physically cut me out of the rope because I couldn't move. I was just laid there like, well, this is me for the rest of the show.
Yeah.
And so as I was cut away, Erin was still in the ring with his foot over Cole, and he'd been there for like a couple of minutes, just sort of like taunting and jeering and, Rory, let me do it, let me end this kid's career, blah blah blah. So sort of being in the moment, like I'd just been cut free. I picked up the chair that was on the floor, I swung it, and I hit Erin in the back, like just to make them leave the ring, if you know what I mean,
Yeah.
to sort of like signal like, right, go backstage, and me and Cole will take like the sympathy vote, and like we'll be sort of the two little kids that have just had their asses kicked, and we'll take a little bit of like sympathy from the crowd. So I hit Erin in the back, and he just sort of looks at me, stands on the chair, which, if, like, we've seen it happen a million times. We've seen that spot in WWE and in hardcore matches, and like, you've seen Edge and Christian do the accordion spot with the chairs and stuff. Like, it shouldn't have been anything that was a cause of concern. But I think the way that Cole was angled and the way that he was laid underneath, the corner of the chair was putting a lot of pressure on his neck and his collarbone. And so I hit Erin with the chair. He stamps on Cole, and they leave the ring. And I sort of like, still in character, still in gimmick, like, oh, sort of upset we've lost the titles, and I check on Cole, and I'm like shoved away by Youngie and the ref, and I'm just like, this isn't normal. And then like the paramedic crew are called to the ring, and I'm just like, this isn't normal. Like, this isn't what we'd planned. Like, I was like, maybe they're adding a bit. Maybe someone had said on the fly, like, that looked gnarly. We should like take Cole out on a stretcher, sort of thing, and really sort of batter this thing home. And then Youngie, the MC, came and sort of said to me in the corner, he was like, yeah, mate, this is legit. Like, Cole's gonna have to go to hospital. And I was just like, I was just devastated, honestly. Like, in that moment, like, the sort of the tears of, we've just lost the belts, like, shit, went from sort of tears from that to Cole could genuinely be paralyzed.
Mm-hmm.
And as you say, at the time, he was my best friend, he was my tag partner, and there was a lot more sort of in depth into it. So I rode with him in the ambulance, and we spent the night in A&E. And from what he was telling me, like, it genuinely sounded fucking scary. Like, it was very much, he said that as soon as like the stomp happened and he felt the crack, he said that he rolled over and he legit couldn't feel anything from like his neck down.
Fucking hell.
And he was just laid there, and I remember looking over and I could see like the tears kind of bubbling up in his eyes, but because he was laid flat, like they hadn't ran down his face.
Yeah.
So they were just kind of like glazed over a little bit, and he just didn't seem with it. And it took him a while to like talk to me or talk to the ambulance crew. And yeah, that's when that show got called short, because we physically couldn't move Cole from the ring until the ambulance arrived, because we thought he could have broken his neck.
Fucking hell. Like,
so yeah, that was heavy.
How did the crowd take to that? Were they all, because the show's being called off early, was they just as concerned, or?
I was going to say no one was fuming that they were going to miss the rest of the show. Like, they just watched me and Cole take an absolute battering off two like big burly lads. But yeah, it was like, it all came from a point of concern rather than like, oh bloody hell, we're going to miss the rest of the show now. Thanks, Cole. Like, it was genuinely like it was a genuine concern thing. So it was nice in a way that people were understanding that, you know, it is a show and it is there for entertainment, but shit just got real. Like, this is now real life, and like real life things happen.
Yeah, definitely. Didn't you return just like 4 months after?
Yeah, so he was told that he should be out for 6 to 8 months and sort of just like attend physio, because what he'd not broken anything. He'd badly bruised his collarbone, and he'd ruptured a muscle, I think.
Yeah.
Which is still like not great. Like, he couldn't train, he couldn't do like anything overly physical, and for the first couple of months he could barely lift his arm past his chest. So he was told 6 to 8 months recovery, and then some physio for his arm and for his back. And then he said that he was feeling a lot better. He was feeling fine towards sort of like the 3.5, 4 month mark.
Yeah.
And I was still being sensible, and I was like, look, this is what the doctor said. You stay out for as long as you need to stay out, and like, your health is more important than like the pop of your return at the minute. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And he was like, yeah, no, I understand. And then we did the Rumble, BWR's Riot Rumble, and I came out, did my couple of spots that was with. So I think I was working primarily with No Fun Done at the time, because I think me and him had a bit of a feud at the time. So I'd come out, run a couple of my spots, was beating down on No Fun Done, and then my music hit again, and I turned round, and Cole made his entrance, and I was just like, "What the fuck are you doing here?" Like, again, it was one of those things that was so well hidden. Like, no one had told me about it. Like, it's very much from management and from, like, as I say, the family's point of view. They want to surprise us just as much as they want to surprise the audience. Like,
Yeah.
they want to see genuine reactions, and they want to see how we respond, sort of thing.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I can't imagine what that'd have been like, just seeing Cole with with that injury. But like you said, you went on to becoming 3-time. You beat the Sick Boys again, and it was shortly after BWR was working with Rise.
Yeah.
What was that like, working with Rise and doing this like inter-promotion war?
It was fun. Don't get me wrong, it was fun, and it got a lot of different eyes on, like, people knew Rise as a promotion, and people knew BWR as a promotion, but, like, our fans didn't necessarily know their guys, because, as you say, like, every company has got sort of core guys that they use. So our fans didn't really know their guys. They just knew they were a name and knew that they wrestled in Leeds. And it was the same, like, their fans didn't really know our guys. So it was a good way of getting, like, different eyes on different people and humanizing a company. Like, at some points it was like Rise had come over and attack the BWR lads, and things went wrong, and people would be like, oh, like, those Rise kids, you know what I mean? And it was the same with us and going over to Rise and just ruining the day. Like, it was really fun. It's the first sort of taste that I've had as working heel,
Yeah.
and going from sort of family friendly, happy chappy, wouldn't say boo to a goose, kids on E numbers, babyface at BWR, to then going and being gritty and sort of snarling at people and swearing at fans because Rise is an over 18 promotion, and, like, being able to go out there and just be a dick. Like, there's something so pleasing about, like, turning up to a show, like, and being told, right, your job today is to just be a dick.
Yeah.
Because, like, there's so much that you can, I don't want to say get away with, because that sounds like you're taking the piss a little bit, but there's so much to it. Like, there's so many different elements of working heel, and there's so many different elements of, like, there's different levels you can work.
Yeah.
I personally find it very therapeutic.
Because it just allows a different side of you to come out, and all the, I guess, aggression and
100%. I mean, I work, not currently because obviously pandemic, but I've worked in a bar for like 2.5 years. So dealing with the general public every day, and dealing with
drunken dickheads.
yeah, dealing with pissheads and people that don't know how to handle their booze and think they can talk to you like scum. Sort of being told, right, okay, this knobhead's been sick in the toilet, like, go and clean it up, and then having, like, lads jeer at you because you're being literally paid to clean up their spew.
Yeah.
It's just, it can become overwhelming and unbearable, and of course you've got to put on a nice face, sometimes nicer than others, because, like, a lot of the time I try not to take any shit anymore because
Yeah.
I'm so done with that now. Someone's acting up and I'm just like, right, you out now. But no, like there's so much that gets built up day to day, and I'm sure you feel the same. Like there's not necessarily like I wouldn't class myself as an angry person, and there's a lot of people out there that aren't angry people. Like they're just fully functioning normal members of society, and they just crack on with a smile because that's what they're paid to do, and that's kind of like the done thing. But going out there and being told, right, you can be a dickhead, like you can incorporate sort of how pissed off like people getting drunk and leery like at an over 18 show. You can now go out there and say all the things that you want to say to them when you're working behind the bar.
Yeah.
Like you can go out there and if someone's got like half a cup full of beer, you can like chuck it out the hand. You can throw shit over the crowd and just give them some shtick that you can't necessarily do in day-to-day life. Like I would highly recommend it. It is very therapeutic.
I'm just picturing you going back through the curtain and everyone's just like, are you okay? Like, I've not seen that, sadly.
Just like, you good? And I'm just like, I am now. We are calm.
Well, whilst we mentioned that anyways, if anybody does get stressed or angry and the mental health is affected, one of my sponsors of the show is Blokes. Have a look on social media at @_blokes. They're mental health for guys to get online. You can speak anonymously on different chats and different forums just around your mental health. So yeah, if you don't have that therapeutic outlet like Scotty does, where he goes to Raz and knock drinks out of the hands and calls everyone a dickhead because he can't do that at work, then if things are getting to you, go have a look at Blokes. It is an amazing like startup that's happening. So thanks to them for sponsoring the show. But getting back to it for yourself then, I know we spoke about the GYV match, which was in your third title reign, but that came to an end in your last match before the pandemic. TLC against Matt Myers and Nathan Cruz, second to none Team Sin. Like, I was worried for you both. At first, I was like, what's Cole going to do in a TLC match? Because I was worried he's going to more or less kill himself. But what was that match like for you, knowing you're going to be working TLC?
It was genuinely exciting, and I was really looking forward to it. As I say, we'd worked the I Quit match with the Sick Boys. We'd worked hardcore matches at Rise. We'd worked a ladder match with Boys to Men, or like Crash Boat as they're known.
Yeah.
So there's always ideas and sort of dumb spots that we can piece together and just be like, right, okay, well, who's throwing themselves off the top of the ladder this time? And turned out it was both of us. So it was new grounds in the sense that it was like a bigger scale, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't a no disqualification match in a seedy nightclub in Bradford. It wasn't like a no holds barred match in Temple of Boom in Leeds. It was like a proper sort of TLC, belts above the ring, in front of the hometown crowd.
Main event,
yeah. That was our first main event. That's wild. Yeah, that's mental.
What was it like working with Cruz and Myers?
Cruz and Myers are absolutely sound. Like, I've got a lot of time for like the NGW boys. As I say, when I moved back from uni, so I've been training with JD and Zach Gibson and a lot of the Northwest scene, like Ethan Allen and Big Guns Joe Bolton, like sort of people that were up and coming in their sort of areas, to then come back home and work with the NGW guys because they were like my closest sort of school, and work with like Cruzy and Myers and even like ref Scott Bell, like he is genuinely an incredible worker, but he wants to ref, and like I'd take my hat off to him. He's an absolute superstar. Corey as well. Corey's like another sort of big standout guy, because they just put the work in, and like they're really sort of genuine people.
Yeah.
And I really got on with them. I've got a lot of time for them. But no, training with Myers and Cruzy, I feel like it really sort of helped in regards to putting something together for a main event.
Yeah. Because I think, like, especially with, if you know the history of NGW, you know the history of Myers and Cruz, where they've main evented shows against each other all the time. Like, it'll be hard to find double figures of main events that didn't involve at least one of them. And
I was going to say, you think of Hull wrestling, and you think of main eventers in NGW, and Cruzy's like top of the list.
Yeah,
100%. Cruzy and Rampage Brown.
Definitely.
Like,
have you worked Rampage before?
No. So the end of that match,
Yeah. I forgot about that, actually.
The end of that match is the first sort of in-ring interaction that we'd had with Rampage. Like, we'd spoken to him like before the show, as you do. So you chat to everyone, and you sort of as accommodating and as welcoming as you can be to everyone, because we're all friends here. We're all here for the same reason. But yeah, that the first time I'd been in ring with Rampage Brown was when he was pushing me off like a 12-foot ladder through 4 tables that were outside.
Which were your last bump in wrestling?
That was my last bump in wrestling. Yeah.
Well, at least you've had quite a lengthy time to recover from said bump.
Oh yeah, I've well and truly picked out the splinters now. So.
Well, I know the pandemic's obviously been hard for a lot of people, and we've seen like the speaking out, which I don't really want to get too much into, but props to BWR. I think they've, and I've said it in shows that don't involve anybody that's ever worked for BWR, whenever this topic's come up there. To me, the company that's set the example. I think they took the time doing their safeguarding and their policies. They didn't just go on the internet and just do a copy and paste quick job. Within 5 minutes of speaking out, already have everything lined out.
No, I think it was super important, because there are bigger companies that you'd expect more from that provided so much less.
Yep.
Like, without sort of naming names and getting into detail, but like, as I say, there are companies that have the manpower and have the money behind them to provide like safeguarding policies and to provide so much more than just a wrestling show on the surface, that you find out later down the line that haven't been providing as much as maybe they should have.
Well, a lot of the time they wouldn't even have paramedics on the show.
No, exactly. Like that's one thing that absolutely baffles me, and sort of, as I say, working sort of different promotions, and like especially companies that are like deathmatch promotions. Like I really, really feel as though they should definitely have paramedics on site.
Yeah.
And a lot of them don't. So I do feel as though because BWR have done things so sort of above board, I do feel as though we've been spoilt in a way, because it's kind of become the norm.
Yeah.
Especially for the local lads, like people like me and Reese Ryan, Devlin, Jimmy McIlwee, Tom Weaver, when we've sort of gone elsewhere and like to work for sort of even like bigger names and bigger sort of well-known companies, we just kind of turned up and just been like, right, okay.
Yeah.
So it's kind of almost like your life's in your own hands a little bit, but there are a lot of companies that do take it seriously, and that they do have medical trained staff. They may not have paramedics. Like some companies do have a team of paramedics there on site. But a lot of companies, if they don't have them, then they will have medically trained staff, or like at the very least first aiders there. Because as you say, anything can happen in the sort of 20 minutes, half an hour that you're out there, that could be done on the fly, could be ad-libbed, could be slipped up and landed wrong. Like, you just don't know.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people, I thought when I was a kid, and you remember the old sort of WWE advert that was like, they put their bodies, their minds, and their careers on the line, and it's like Jeff Hardy falling through a ladder.
Better promo that's on the product these days.
Exactly. And like Randy Orton's there, sort of gripping his leg, and like, as a kid,
It's
I was
got
just
the
like,
Triple H on the table spot as well, hasn't it? Where
yes, yeah. See, I thought as a kid, I was like, oh, like, it's cool, it's gimmicky, it makes it feel edgy, and it makes it feel like it makes it feel more real. And then you get involved in the business, and you're like, no, this stuff like genuinely happens. Like, people go out and wrestle. This is why it gets to me that people are willing to wrestle for companies that aren't as reputable, that, like, because obviously it's a big thing within wrestling to know your worth.
Yeah.
And like, there are companies out there that aren't as reputable, that will ask you to wrestle for free and wrestle for exposure and stuff like that. And to genuinely to go out there and to wrestle for 20 minutes, half an hour, to put your body on the line and risk yourself in the sense that you could genuinely get injured and earn less than like minimum wage. Like, it absolutely baffles me. Like, why would you do that to yourself? Not to mention, like, it doesn't pay for training or travel or gear, anything like that. Like, it's constantly like said within the scene to sort of know your worth and don't take shit. Like, don't get shat on.
Yeah, no, definitely. But yeah, props to BWR for the way they've handled it, and I'm looking forward to the restart. But despite the pandemic, you've been posting like progress on social media where you've been getting in some phenomenal shape. And what's next for yourself? Like, are you going to still be teaming with Cole going forward, or are you going to start focusing on some more singles stuff? Like, what's next for Scotty Rawk, especially in BWR?
So yeah, I've really sort of I've sort of grabbed the pandemic by the bollocks and ran with it. So I've made it my own. Like, everyone had an emotional response to start with, and that's perfectly normal because we are living through something that we have never, as a human race, lived through before. Especially not like these generations or past generations and stuff. So there is an immediate emotional response, but I genuinely I took this as a time to sort of, as you say, get in shape and just become the best that I can be, not only in my personal life but as a product for wrestling. And to really sort of set myself above the rest in the indie scene. Like, there's a lot of guys that have been on the same journey as me. So like, we train with a bloke called Nush. So Nush is our PT. On Instagram, he's at Train with Nush. And he's just done some absolutely phenomenal work for us lads through the pandemic. Just keeping us motivated and keeping our mindset clear, and just asking us, like, how many times are you going to allow something that's out of your control to stop your progress? And that's really sort of resonated with me, especially because we don't have control at the end of the day. And there's a lot of things that do get in the way that we don't have control of. But to let that get in the way of where you want to be as a person, where you want to be as a wrestler, or where you want to be physically and mentally, like, it's just, there's no in between. Like, you're either all in or you're not. And that's sort of where we've ended up. So yeah, I've worked really hard, sort of getting to the position that I'm at now. And in all fairness, it is in preparation for when wrestling does make a comeback, because as you say, like, Brit wrestling isn't dead, and I do feel like it's going to come back sort of bigger and better than ever, especially after movements such as Speaking Out, where it's basically just been like a cleanse of the scene. So we're all going to come back feeling more motivated. We're all going to come back feeling safer, like we've got something to prove. And like I'm really excited for it because everyone is so damn hungry. Everyone wants that, man. Everyone wants it. But yeah, as for me, I think it's looking more like singles work.
Yeah.
So I'm finally going to sort of hopefully get the push in the singles direction that I've wanted for quite a while. And I will be making a beeline within BWR straight for the BWR Cruiserweight belt. Like, that is at the minute my immediate goal. So it's get in shape, it's bring wrestling back, it's train, and then it's cruiserweights. Like, that's the style that I've always wanted to wrestle. That's the style that I've been kind of honing in on and crafting and bringing for myself. And that's where I want to be. I want to be at the level that, like, Robbie X is at. Like we've mentioned, Robbie X is one of the best cruiserweights in the country, if not like the world. Genuinely one of the best guys that I've ever worked. But that's the sort of competition that I want to be in. I want to be at a position where I can compete with those guys.
So when, like, obviously all the titles are vacated now, so whether it's tournament or whatever happens, titles on the line, it's yourself. Who do you want the opponent to be for your crowning moment?
For a cruiserweight belt,
yeah.
I would love my ideal world. So we've had a couple of shows back. We've had the big hurrah, and we're now getting down to sort of the nitty gritty of like recrowning champions. And it's no longer like BWR's greatest hits. It's no longer like smiling in front of a crowd and getting the big pops that we've returned and we've come back bigger and better than ever. Like, we've done that. It's a couple of months down the line, and we are getting to the nitty bits of right, well, who's the better technical wrestler and who can out wrestle someone for a championship belt. Like, forget sort of like the big pops and things like that and big returns. And I would love to be in the ring for the cruiserweight belt facing Robbie X and 2-Bit.
No, that'd be great. Obviously, 2-Bit was the champion when it got vacated. Robbie X the champion before. And I think the cruiserweight division with BWR has been fantastic. Obviously, Kip Sabian in the past, you've had Ricky Knight Jr. as well. I know, am I right in thinking yourself and Cole faced Jody Fleisch and Johnny Storm?
Yeah, we faced Fleisch and Storm, and that was really, really cool. It was very much like old school meets new school, and like, boys can still hang, like, genuinely,
still
like,
so good.
Ridiculous, man. Like, the stuff that I was seeing them do like 15, 20 years ago, boys can still move, like 100%. Not that I ever doubted that for a minute, but like, Jody is a specimen. Like, Jody is in incredible shape.
Yeah.
And Johnny is still quick, not only in the ring, but he's still quick-witted and funny, and he can move. Like, they can still bust the same stuff that they were doing arguably in their prime, but I don't think they've come out of their prime. Like, I think they peaked in the early 2000s and stayed at that level. Like, there's been no sort of drop.
Yeah, because I always remember Jody stepped away, and I remember it was when I'd be like helping out at NGW, and it was the Brit Rest Fest in Liverpool, and it was Jody Fleisch's returning match against Johnny Storm.
Yeah.
And I can always remember was setting up like all the merch tables, and Jody was out, and he was trying to spring up to that top rope to see if he's going to be able to do it, and it was like trying to like show off the cobwebs and was like, is he going to be able to do it? And then as soon as it's game time and the bells rang and the match has been absolutely fantastic, hits it flawlessly, and it's like, fucking hell, like how
It's
can you
so
have
smooth.
that period off and then come back and do that?
It's so smooth. Like, for some people, wrestling's like riding a bike, and they will never lose it. And no matter how long they step away from the game or how much time out they have, there will always be that itch to come back.
Yeah.
And they will come back, and it will be like liquid. Like, it will be so fluent. It will be so easy. And then for other people, like, I will put myself in this category as well, 100%. Like, we've been out of the game now for almost a year. Almost a year. That first bump we take when we get back is gonna suck. Like, people are gonna be winded. People are gonna be gassed. Like, it's okay doing cardio and working out and stuff, but nothing compares to in-ring cardio and in-ring training, because it's just it's on a different level. Like, you can spend an hour on a treadmill, burn like 500 calories, get a sweat on, but when you're put in a wrestling ring and you're like, right, hit the ropes non-stop for a minute, I want a minute of sleeps and leaps, I want like a full minute of up and overs, like, I would take that over a treadmill any day.
Definitely.
As much as it's like torture, like you are doing this to yourself. It's a different level of fitness, and I feel like some people look at wrestling and be like, well, it's fake, it's not real, no one hits each other, I could do that. And it's like, I challenge you, like, anyone that's out there that feels as though it's fake, that feels as though they could step in and step up to even like even not even the best in the biz, but like the shit asses. Like, I challenge anyone out there that's like, wrestling's fake, and you don't need to be in good physical shape to be like the guy. Come to a training session, go to a training school, and you will be put firmly in your place, because like, these like people work hard.
Yeah. Now I always remember like with my first training session, and I thought shouldn't be too bad. I was in good nick. I was coaching football professionally for a living. I was like decent shape, and then that first session I was like, fucking hell, this isn't like pre-season at football. Like,
No,
it is completely different.
I remember my first session. Like, I was 17. I was 14 stone. Like, I was a chunky lad, and I was one of the sort of people that had grown up watching wrestling and was like, sort of, if this guy can do it, why can't I, sort of thing. But I went in with the right attitude, and I was like, this is something that I'm passionate about, and this is something that I've always wanted to do. First session in, taught how to take a couple of bumps, and then it was, right, slide in the ring, take a clothesline, take your bump, roll out. I slide in the ring, stand up, and crumble because I've Kevin Nashed myself on the fucking ring post sliding in. Like, I'd just moved my kneecap out of place by twatting it on the side of the ring. And I was like, I think I was very quickly humbled, and I was very quickly like, oh, this isn't a game.
No, definitely not. But now it'll be really exciting to see, especially what you'll do with BWR, but also to see what will be next for yourself, like in other companies, like especially as a singles competitor. Because where have you been working other than BWR?
So in the build leading up to the coronavirus hiatus, we will call it. So I'd worked, obviously, BWR being my home. I'd worked a couple of NGW shows, like the Proving Ground shows. I'd worked for North up in Newcastle, Rise and Tidal in Leeds, True Grit in York. So I was getting about a little bit, and BWR was starting to work alongside TNT in Liverpool, doing like ring hires and ring jobs. But one of my favourite days of wrestling was when I was booked to wrestle a charity show in Manchester called Fight the Good Fight.
Yeah.
And it was a mental health wrestling charity show raising money for Papyrus and Manchester Mind. And it was just such a wholesome day. I think altogether we managed to raise like over £4,000, which is incredible.
Yeah.
And obviously given to both charities. And it was all organised, and it was the first time I'd ever met Lucy Openshaw. Yeah.
And the rest is history.
And the rest is history. And now I can't get rid of her.
No, because I think just before she came up with that plan, I'd had her on the show for like one of my previous ventures. And it was great to see like what she was doing. I think hopefully, I know obviously pandemic ruined that, but hopefully it can be like a yearly thing, because again, mental health is something that needs to be taken a lot more seriously, and it's why I've been so open about like discussing it and things like that.
100%. Genuinely, like when you mentioned about your sponsor being, was it Blokes?
Yeah.
I had no idea that obviously it was sponsored by someone that sort of advocated such open mental health. But that's something that I've been very, very passionate about.
Yeah.
It's something that I've worked very strongly and very firmly alongside with. Like I've worked with BBC Radio 1, and we put together a podcast. It was like a three episode documentary podcast about mental health and wrestling, and basically my story of how wrestling has helped overcome certain obstacles in my life and genuinely sort of eased the way that I've felt. I managed to give a TED talk. I was given the opportunity to give a TED talk up in Newcastle, and that was wrestling with my mental health and things like that, because people struggle and people don't have that release or that healthy release that I've managed to find.
Yeah.
And if I can sort of share my passion with other people and sort of lend a helping hand in the sense of whether it be just a friendly ear to talk to or a friendly voice to listen to, like that's what I'd love to be able to do. Like, granted, I'm not the biggest in the biz, and like one day we all dream to be the John Cenas of our sort of chosen industries, but I will always use my platform, no matter how big or small, to promote mental health awareness and good practice for mental health, and anyone suffering out there, just to sort of reassure them that things may not be great right now.
Yeah.
But you live for those moments that are fucking fantastic.
100%. And it's good to see that you'd been doing all that stuff, like, because I remember when I was working with Hull City, I'd started volunteering with Princess Trust.
Yeah.
Because I did a course with them years ago. So I'd do motivational speaking. I'd go here, there, and everywhere. Speak about, again, my troubles with mental health to an audience who's also struggling.
Yeah.
Speak to them one-to-one. And off the back of that, there was I ended up doing like a newspaper article with the Hull Daily Mail. I was on BBC Radio Humberside speaking about mental health, and for the radio one would have been for parents, because I was still quite young then, so it was like to speak to parents of why their children might not be speaking to them when they're struggling about mental health, and just where my like mind and thought process was. And
That's incredible.
It was off the back of that I'd gone to Manchester United, did a speech there with Rio Ferdinand, which was quite surreal.
That's mental.
It was just one of those where I think after that, I was like, right, I'm going to be a bit more public. And I started using social media where family and friends would be seeing more of it. And I think it's something that people need to normalise and people need to talk about. If people have physical injuries, to talk about the road to recovery and how they're doing. And I think we need to
Oh
normalise
man,
mental
that
health as
is
that.
what I've said all along. If you are physically ill, you would go to the doctors, and if you are prescribed medicine, you would take that until you're better. So if you're mentally ill, why would you not seek that same help?
I'm laughing. I use the exact same phrase I can't say like my shoot job now, but in my shoot job, I still work with a lot of people that come across and they may be struggling with mental health. And so I'm not taking tablets, or I'm not doing counselling or CBT. I'm like, right, say you go
Why?
outside, you slip and you break your leg. He's like, yeah. I went, would you take painkillers? You're like, well, yeah, it hurt. I'm like, okay. Would you do your physio? I was like, well, I'd need to build it up. I was like, okay. I went, with your mental health, does that hurt you? He was like, well, yeah, like I struggle a lot. I went, so if medication would heal your mind and numb the pain like it would your leg, wouldn't you take it? He was like, I was like, and with the counselling and CBT, just see it as physio for the
It's
mind.
physio, yeah, 100%, and that is such a refreshing way to look at things. Like, because I've said this before, and people have sort of looked and been like, "Wow, wow, yeah, like we never really thought of it like that." But to speak to someone that uses those same examples, like I'm
Nearly
like,
every day, my shoot job.
oh, it's really refreshing to see that I'm like not the only one. Like, you know what I mean? Like, because I could have been going about this whole thing completely wrong, but like I know what works for me, and obviously, if like sort of my methods or your methods or anything sort of can help anyone, like there is help out there. And as I say, that's what sort of brought me to working Fight the Good Fight,
Yeah.
because Lucy had kept up with like the TED talk that I'd done, which, as you say, sort of public speaking in front of strangers is terrifying.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, terrifying. I'm being up there and I was shaking the entire time I was up there. So I'd prepped for it all and went up there and sat through other people's like talks and presentations and everything. And then it got down to me, and I just remember being sat there. My name was called, and I was like, "Shit, I am the only." I was like, "I am the only person speaking today that doesn't have a PhD,
Yeah.
that isn't a published author, that isn't like a well-known sort of like doctor or graduate within sort of mental health area or science, or, as you say, written books in self-help or things like that." And I just got up and spoke, and I
You'd have
was
got the
like,
best response, I guarantee.
yeah, it was crazy. I got up and I was like, "Hi, this is me. This is what I've sort of been through. This is my escape. Sometimes I get sad, so I put on spandex," and that's where it was left. And the amount of people that had come up to me afterwards and was like, "Thank you so much for talking." Like, it was a real, genuine talk, and like you sort of you let us into your mind a little bit.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's all I can do. Like, that's why I've always said be so open and honest with other people, not only because it resonates with them, and people can relate to you and maybe find solace in what you're saying, but do it for yourself as well, because it is like so. Like, I felt so much relief getting a lot of things off my chest in that completely one-sided narcissistic group therapy session.
Yeah.
And that's all I sort of saw it as. Like, it was me given a platform to talk about like the things that I've been through and get that all out in the open and get it off my chest.
Yeah.
And
No, 100%.
it was so good.
Yeah, 100%. And if people are wondering and wanting to learn more about blokes, I do interviews exclusively for Wrestle Carnival, and blokes are going to be working with Wrestle Carnival. So I spoke to Tom, who created it, and we'll both speak a bit about like our mental health background and our struggles and what blokes about. So make sure head over to Wrestle Carnival's YouTube. You can check out on there. But if you are struggling, like again, look at blokes. Reach out to myself. I'm sure Scotty wouldn't mind if he's struggling. Like,
Yeah,
reach
I'm
out to
here.
him and just look at all the different avenues, like with Let's Talk and Mind and stuff. They are great services, and
Yeah.
don't push it off. Like it's hard. Those first few sessions are fucking hard. I always remember having to go to mine after like a suicide like attempt, and I couldn't leave the house, and it was wrestling that got me through it. I used to listen to X-Pac 12360. I'd watched a video on YouTube, so then I'm not watching anything in my surroundings or anything like that. I'd do the session, right, get X-Pac back on, jump on the bus home, and that's what helped me, and it helped me calm before it and afterwards. And I always remember writing to X-Pac about it, and I was like, look, I just want to say thank you. I was like, this is the sort of stuff that I'd done in the past. Because I think off the back of it, I'd met the Queen of England in March, talked about all the mental health stuff I'd done, all the work in Africa. In May, Buckingham Palace, and then it was by the following February, like unemployed, trying to commit suicide and stuff like that. And everything just took a nosedive. And so I wrote to him about it, and I remember him speaking about me on his show, and he dropped the name and stuff like that. And when I went to All In, was speaking there, and I was like, oh, it's good to see you doing so well, and stuff like that. And it is things like that. So just make sure you do try and reach out, and if wrestling's your outlet, just make sure you've got some on your phone and just watch wrestling on the way, watch wrestling on the way back, watch wrestling a little bit when you're at home, and until you calm down, and then
100%. 100%.
But to kind of like wrap things up then on like a lighter note, what are your goals like ultimately? Where do you want to be?
So me and Lucy were speaking about this not so long ago actually, because obviously like me and her have been together for sort of 9-10 months now.
Yeah.
And
one of the good things that have come out of this pandemic.
Oh, 100%. Like 2020 may have been a shite year across the board, but personally for me, for like personal growth and genuinely connecting with the girl that I'm in love with, like today, it's been one of the best years of my life. So to flip that negative into a massive positive is incredible. So yeah, me and Lucy were talking about like goals and stuff and wishes and dreams, and I've said that sort of immediate goals when wrestling returns is sort of wrestle as much as I can for as many reputable companies as I can. So really just sort of take the UK by storm. I'd love to be working for ICW. Maybe eventually sort of places like NXT UK, but ICW and OTT, but like big sort of British names. And then after that, I think I would love to go and wrestle in Japan because it just looks incredible.
What is it about Japan that you like?
I love the culture. I love the culture around Japanese wrestling.
Yeah.
And the way that it's presented and the way that people sort of present themselves within Japanese wrestling and things like that. Like I've worked on shows with people that have been to Japan and told us how amazing it is. And as I say, sort of being in conversations with people like Drew Parker, who's now like absolutely huge in Japan. Talking to like Grizzle Young Veterans who have like traveled the world, talking to Jody and Johnny who were massive in Japan.
Yeah.
Even like one of the like a couple of the NGW lads and some of the local lads that have been over there and wrestled, and like it's been huge. Like I've spoke to like Will Cruz about it as well, and he went over and trained in I think it was like the NJPW dojo.
Oh wow.
Like just absolutely mind-boggling. So yeah, that's like immediate goals and sort of further down the line goals. I would love to wrestle Japan and abroad.
Yeah. Oh no, definitely. Like fingers crossed for you. Like you do deserve it, and like you're only just getting started as well. I think your body of work, people can check it out with BWR on demand. Like to go see some of those matches and see why he was a real crowd favourite. So it's going to be exciting to see what's next for you as you break off as a single star, still having that crowd behind you. And I say
Yeah.
this, the first show back, you're probably going to turn heel and all this will be null and void.
You heard it here first. You heard it here first.
So where can people find you on social media?
So on Facebook, you just have to search for Scotty Rawk, and the same on Twitter. So I'm just at Scotty Rawk. Instagram, I am at Rawk and Wrestling. And more importantly, like the thing that's helped me sort of through the pandemic the most is I've been writing music again.
Yeah.
So if you could go and check out at Orphan Band, that'd be incredible. We've got some really cool stuff coming up. We're currently in the midst of teasing our single release that's Friday. So I don't know, when does this show air? When does this show go out?
So yours is coming out on, is it the 29th? Is your single release on the 29th?
22nd.
So this coming Friday.
Yeah.
So by the time, it'll already be out. So make sure people go check it out.
So yeah, as soon as you finish listening to this podcast, go and check out Orphan Band and check out the song that we've just dropped, because it slaps.
Brilliant. And if for some miraculously thing, I've got a newborn, 11 and a half weeks old, but if I do manage to get it out by tomorrow, then the next day, make sure you go check it out. I'll put the things in the description so you can find the social media handles, you can find Orphan Band. And yeah, Scotty, thank you for coming on, mate. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
No, thanks for having me, genuinely. Anytime, man.
Yeah, definitely. So everybody, make sure you do go follow Scotty. Make sure you hit like, subscribe. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening.
Friday morning.